Hey everyone, Zach here, and welcome to the fourth lesson of this series, an introduction to Unreal Engine. In this video, we'll begin setting up the elements for our platformer game. In particular, we will create our platform, which will be an actor. In addition, we'll create a trigger to reset the level if we fall off the map. This same trigger will be used elsewhere for when we complete the level. Remember that from this point forward, a copy of the project can be found on GitHub. The link is in the description below. Also check out for links for further information on blueprints, actors, and triggers. That said, fire up your editor, open your project, and let's get started.
Welcome back to the editor. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to create a new folder in our content browser. So I want you to go to your main content browser so you see all the folders you have. Right click on this screen and hit new folder. And we're just going to create a folder I'm going to call platformer. Everything related to the tutorial will go in here. So we're going to do a little bit of cleanup as well. So open up that platformer folder and we're going to create a few new subfolders in here. The first one we're going to create will be blueprints. So right click, new folder, and we'll create one called blueprints, as I said. We're going to create another one called character. Now typically I would store this in the blueprints folder, but we're not going to for this lesson. And then finally a third folder called maps. So as I mentioned, we're going to do a bit of cleanup. So what I want you to do is click this little triangle here to extend the folder tree out and drag in your mannequin folder into your characters. And they'll give you the option between move here, copy here, and advanced copy. Go ahead and click move here. Okay, once it's done copying, go ahead and delete this folder by right clicking and selecting delete. And it might tell you there isn't a problem. If there is, I'll show you what to do. Alright, so this is the problem. It's saying there are references to this. Instead of deleting it, hit cancel. Right click mannequin and find fix up redirectors in folder. Once that's done, the folder should vanish because there's nothing in there. We have moved it into our character file. If it's still there, go ahead and right click on it and hit delete, and it should delete. Next, go to your third person blueprint and open up blueprints. And you'll see in here we have our third person character. It has this red check mark now because we've made a change that we haven't committed to our source control yet. Go ahead and drag that folder, the blueprints folder that is, into your character folder. Go ahead and hit move here again. And go ahead and delete the characters folder. But first, make sure to do the fix up redirectors in folder. Alright, so now that we have this cleaned up, what we're going to do is we're going to create a new map. So go up to your platformer folder and go to your maps. There are two ways we can create maps. First, we can click File, New Level, and you'll have an option between a default map, a VR Basic, and an empty level. Now, these are sometimes useful, but I find them to be a little bit problematic. The way I prefer to do it is to, in the folder I'm going to have the map, right click, and select level. And now I'm going to name this level 01. Go ahead and open that level up and make sure to save everything. I'll ask you if you want to. And you'll see we have a very dark space. That's because there's no lighting and there's nothing in this world right now. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to add some lighting. So in your modes section of your screen, go to search classes and type in sky, and you'll see BP sky sphere. So drag that into the world and you notice we have some lighting. I'm just going to set the location to this as 0, 0, 0. It doesn't actually matter where the location is because it is just around the camera, making it seem like there's a sky. I'm going to clear out this search by hitting that X there. And then I'm going to go to lights, and I'm going to drag in a directional light. And again, it doesn't matter where the directional light is because this icon doesn't show up in the game. The light itself is infinitely far away from the camera. So I can set this to whatever number I want. And again, I'm just going to set it to 0, 0, 0. And you'll see the icon has moved to the center of the map. The next thing I want to do is I want to go back to my sky sphere, and in my details panel, it says directional light actor. I want to click that drop down and find my directional light. Once I've done that, you'll notice the sky color changes, and the light is at about 11 o'clock position. So if I look at this light icon here, we can see the light, the angle at which the light is shining down. So this white arrow tells you where the light is shining. So if I select my light and then hit E for rotate or spacebar once from the move selection, and then drag that so it's pointing up, it's going to give me a somewhat nighttime sky. But due to some of the other angles, I'll have a dusk-like quality. But you'll notice it hasn't changed. So if I go back to my sky sphere and hit this refresh material button here, oh, I didn't get that dusk quality. You'll notice the color of the sky changes to this nighttime quality. Now I want it to be daytime, so I'm going to drag this back down to a noon position. Go back to my sky sphere and hit refresh material. And now the sun is directly overhead. So that takes care of setting up our lighting for this level. The next little bit is where we're going to create our first platform material that we'll use. And we're going to do that by creating a blueprint for it. So go to your blueprints folder, and in here, right click and click blueprint classes. This will open a dialog option up with various classes. There are more classes than what is listed here. So if I hit all classes, I can scroll through or search for the class I'm looking for. However, in this case, I just want a simple actor. So I'm going to select actor, and then type in BP for blueprint _ platform. Now I use Pascal casing. Pascal casing is where the first letter of every word is capitalized outside of acronyms. Unreal can tell new words by capital letters. So if I were to type in platform test, it would put a readable name that says platform space test instead of one solid word. It doesn't matter if you use Pascal casing, camel casing, or underscores between words. Unreal Engine can read all of it. You just can't put any spaces in any of the file names. So go ahead and open up your BP platform. And I like to pin these into the window that I'm working in. You can just hit the maximize button if you want, but I prefer to drag it and pin it in here. So you'll notice that we have a viewport that shows us the actor that we're working on. This sphere is actually just a reference point, and we'll be getting rid of it in a second. You'll also notice that we have a components panel, so what is going into this actor. We have a blueprints panel, which includes our functions. So this event graph is the same as that event graph. If I click that, it will take me into there. We have our functions, which will open up unique event graphs for different things, and we'll explore this in the next video. We then also have our variables, and notice we have default scene root. This default scene root is that default scene root up there. We also have the details about that default scene root, or about the platform, since we have that selected in our class defaults. You also have a construction script. And what a construction script does is it says when we add this into the game world, so when we as the developers put it into the map, it needs to do this right away. The event script is what happens during gameplay. And also then notice in our viewport, we have the same sort of options of our view, our lighting, our selections as we do in our main window. Now the first thing I want to do is I want to get rid of this sphere. I don't like having the default scene root as my root. So I'm going to click add component and type in scene. And then out of this list, I'm going to take the third option here, the thing that just says scene. And I'm not going to rename it. I'm just going to select the name as it is. And I'm going to click on this and drag it so it highlights default scene root. And then it replaces the default scene root, making scene now the root component. Everything is going to come off the root component. Now you notice it still says default scene root down here, even though it doesn't exist anymore. So to get rid of that, I'm just going to click the compile button here. and there it goes. Now scene is there. Now, there's nothing in here. We need a platform. So to create a platform, again, I'm going to go to add component, and I'm going to type in static mesh. And I'm just going to name the static mesh platform, so I know what it is. And you notice there's now a widget here. This is known as a debugging widget. And I'm going to add a mesh to this widget. So over on the right-hand side, you'll notice we have some information. And one of the bits of information we have is a static mesh. And currently it says none. However, I want the cube. So I'm going to open this up, and cube is on the top. So I'm just going to select 1m cube, so for a 1 meter cube. And it populates a cube into the viewport along with a material that is known as cube material. And I can, again, change the rotation, scale, and location of where this is. Right now, I don't want to change any of these. Now, this seems fairly simple. We could have just dragged a cube in instead of this, but I might want to add something to this later on, and I just like having a blueprint of it. So now that we've done that, we can go back to our main map and drag this cube in. And we can then set where we want it. So I'm going to put it at 0, 0, 0. And that's a fairly small cube. So what I want to do with this is I want to make it a little bit bigger. And I'm going to extend its length in the length in the x-axis to 11.75 to give myself a little bit of a runway there. I am then going to extend the width of it to 2.5. So it's 2.5 times bigger than the default size now. There we go. We have a nice little sort of walkway. Now we can't do much with this yet, so we're going to find in our basics our player start. And I'm just going to drag that out onto the map. And you'll notice there's an arrow here. This arrow tells you which way it's facing. So when I start the game, I'll be facing that way, the end of the platform. Well, I don't want to face that way. I want to face the direction that the platform is going. So I'm going to hit spacebar or E and rotate it so that arrow is pointing that direction. Now if I hit play now, I'm going to start there and I can walk to the end of the platform. Except for we have a little bit of a problem. It didn't give me my third person. It just gave me a camera that I can move. So I'm going to go into my world settings and I'm going to select my third person game mode for now. And I'm going to hit play again, and there we are. There's my third person. I can walk him along the map. You'll notice it says preview on the texture. You can ignore that. That's just because we haven't built the lighting. We'll deal with that later on. So not much can happen. I can fall, and I'll fall infinitely. Or at least actually I'll fall for 5 minutes. I'll fall until I reach that kill Z level in our world settings, which takes about 5 minutes to get there. But we'll take care of, resetting the level once the player has fallen a certain distance. Let's give us a little bit of practice jumping for our player or for our user by adding in another one of these blocks. Let's again go to our details panel and set this block to have a size of, say, 6 in length and 2.5 in width. Now you notice they're not perfectly lined up, so I'm going to go to top view by clicking perspective and selecting top. Then I'm going to select the new platform I put in. I'm going to hit W to bring me back to the ability to move the platform. I'm just going to line it up, and I'm going to give it a little bit more space between the two. And then I'm going to hit play and test this out. As you can see, there's a new platform there, and I'm going to hit spacebar to jump to it. And you can see I've landed on that new platform. All right, let's play around and add a couple more. Let's go back to perspective. Let's add a couple more of these platforms in. So I'm just going to select the last one we made. I'm going to hold the Alt button down, and I'm going to drag forward a bit, and then I'm going to drag up a bit without holding the Alt key this time. So Alt just duplicated the platform we were working on. I'm going to go to my left view and find where that platform is. That's a little bit too high. I'm going to move it down and a little bit closer. There we go. And let's test this out. See if we can actually jump onto that new platform. All right. So it seems to be working quite nicely there. Except for I just fell between those platforms. All right. And let's add in one more platform. Let's drag this out. I'm going to hold Alt again. And then drag it out a bit. And then I'm going to extend this platform. And I want you to notice it's an extend in both directions from the middle. I'm going to make this one also 11.75. And now, because it's extended from the middle, it's closed that gap. And I don't want that to happen, so I'm going to drag this a little bit further out. All right, so now I have 4 platforms. This should be a good enough test just to run the character along, jump to one platform on the same level, and then go up a level. All right. So now that we've done that, not much to it, but let's save what we've done. And the easiest way to save isn't hitting this save current, because that just saves the map. Instead, hit Control-Shift-S, and that will save everything we've worked on. Notice that that little question mark turned into a plus sign. It's now added to the commit. So it's now saying, yep, we want to include this. But we aren't done here. We're going to add some other things. So in our blueprints folder, let's add in another folder. Let's add in something called environment. And we're going to just drag this platform into there. We're going to move it. And let's create a couple of other folders. We're going to create one called Enums, which stands for enumeration. And I'll include some documentation about blueprints and what enums are down in the description below. And we're going to create another new folder called triggers. Now, with blueprints, just like C++, best practice says to create something that can be used multiple times and in multiple ways. So instead of creating multiple platforms that might have different shapes, we can click on a platform, go to the platform inherited in our details panel, and change the mesh out. Likewise, when we end a level and when we fall too far and want to restart a level, we're going to use the same trigger. So to do that, the first thing we need is something called an enumeration. An enumeration is just an easy to read list. So I'm going to go into my enumeration folder, I'm going to right click, and instead of clicking blueprint class, I'm going to go down to blueprints, and you'll see enumeration in here. And I'm going to type in E for enumeration _ level names. Except for I'm going to make sure that E isn't capital, level names. And I'm going to open this up. And here is our enumeration blueprint. It's just going to create a list. And to add an item to this list, I'm going to click New. And there it creates our first item. And I'm going to name this item level 01. And I'm going to add 2 more. And the next one will, of course, be level 02. And then level 03. We're going to save that. And then I'm going to go back to my main window, go back to my blueprints, and then into my triggers. In my triggers, I'm going to right-click and go to Blueprint Class. And I'm going to create a new actor. And I'm going to name this actor BP _ end level. And I'm going to open this up. I'm going to do what I did last time and get rid of this default scene root by clicking Add Component and typing in Scene and dragging that over this default scene root. I'm going to compile to get rid of it from my components list. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add in a collision box. This collision box will be visible in the editor, but not during gameplay. So I'm going to click Add Component, and I'm going to type in Box, and you'll see a box collision. And I'm going to then go to my viewport, and I'm going to go to my left view or right view, doesn't really matter. And I'm going to drag it up so the bottom of the box is roughly at this red line. Once I've done that, you can go back to perspective. So we have an invisible box. On the right hand side with the box selected, actually we're going to rename this box, so you can either hit F2 or right click and go to rename. I'm going to name this box endpoint. So with our box now named endpoint selected, I'm going to scroll down on this right hand panel and we have some events. The one I care about is on component begin overlap. So when something overlaps with this component, we want a particular event to occur. I'm going to click that, and you notice that panel will go away. It might even bring you into your event graph. All that's happened is created something in our event graph. So let's go over there and see what it's created. It's created this node called on component begin overlap. You also will notice, and this is true for most blueprints, we have 3 nodes already, event begin play. So this says when the game starts on this level or on a map where this item exists, do we want it to do something? Well, we don't, so we can go ahead and delete it. We have an event actor begin overlap, and we can delete that. And we have something called event tick. This fires every time the computer ticks. So your computer has an internal clock. This is very similar to that sort of idea. Every time that clock goes off in your computer, every time the screen refreshes, things like that, relates to a tick. Now, we'll go into more detail on ticks later, but for now, we can delete it because we do not need it. We're just going to work with this node. And you'll notice that on this node, we have a few little buttons here, or little plugs. So this plug here is known as an execute plug. This is the main plug. Anything that doesn't have an execute plug that isn't a function isn't going to do anything. So this says when this happens, so when something overlaps with endpoint to do something. So what it does has to come off this execute. The other components you'll notice have different color. These colors relate to the type of variable they are. So red, for example, is a Boolean variable. Green, this particular shade of green, is integer. There's another shade of green which will represent our float numbers. And then these blues up here are actors. They each represent a different actor that it's looking for. So other actor will be the actor that interacts with the overlap point, for example. This dark blue here is a structure. We don't need to worry about anything in here right now except for this execute pin. However, again, in the description below, I've included information on blueprints. I advise that you read that information over. So we're going to drag off this execute pin, and where you drag, it will open up this executable actions. And you can either go through each one of these to find what you're looking for, or you can search. And in this case, I want to either end the level by restarting it at the beginning, or by bringing the player to the next level. So I'm going to I'm going to type in open level. Alright, and you'll notice that we have this new node that says open level, and the execute pins are attached to each other. If we extend this out, we can see some other things in here, but what we care about is this level name. It wants to know what level to use. Now we could just type in the name. We could type in level 02, even though we don't have a level 02 yet, or we could plug a variable into here. And that's exactly what we're going to do. So if you remember, we've just created a list of our level names in that enum. So what you're going to do is we're going to call that enum up in this blueprint. To do so, go to your variables, click this plus variable button, type in a name that will work for you. I'm going to type in level names ref, where the ref stands for references. You'll notice it starts as a Boolean variable, that red color. So you can change your variable type by clicking this drop down. You can also change if it's a single variable versus an array or a set or a directory. Now, for people familiar with C++, these arrays are more like vectors. Vectors in Unreal, however, are actual mathematical vectors. If you're not familiar with C++, an array is simply a group of one sort of variable. So a group of Boolean variables, for example. However, I want a single variable, so I'm going to leave it on that little dash sign. And this isn't going to be a Boolean. It's going to be a reference to this enum we've created. So I'm going to click this variable type, and in the search, I'm going to type in E_level names. And I'm going to select that. I've now created a reference to it. And I want this to be a little bit more organized. So in categories, where it says default, I'm just going to click it and type in references. And you'll notice it creates a new folder here called references. So right now, if I hit compile, I can only set this inside this blueprint. I can only say what level it's going to inside of here. Now, I don't want that. I want to be able to change it in the world editor. So to do that, I'm going to click instance editable. I suck at saying that word, so I apologize. And expose on spawn. And I'm going to add in a tooltip. The tooltip is just, what does this do? So this returns the name of the map I want to load. Now that I've done that, I'm going to drag this new variable out. You also notice I dragged out the open level to give myself more space. But now with the level names ref dragged out, I'm going to select get level name ref. I am going to drag off of this, and I'm going to search for enum to string. I don't want enum to name, even though this is a name, because it's actually going to return a value that doesn't work. So I'm going to do enum to string. Now I'm going to drag from this string node here all the way to the name, and it will convert it from a string to a name. I'm going to compile and hit save, and then I'm going to go back to my map. So now with my BP and level, I'm going to drag this onto the map, and it's way too high. No player is going to reach this, and I'm going to use this to restart the map when the player falls. So what I'm going to do is on location, I'm going to set the Z to -1000, so it's now below the map or below the platforms. And then I'm going to go to top view. And to make my life a little bit easier, I'm going to start this at a Y of 0. So it's on the center line. And a X of 0. Ooh, I didn't set the Y correctly. Sorry about that. I was wondering why I was so far over. A Y of 0 and an X of 0. I'm going to hit R for scale, and I'm going to put my cursor between the red and green line, so I'm getting both of them at once, and I'm going to drag it out. There we go. So now it's getting bigger, and I'm going to keep dragging until I cover a fair amount of space. However, I've just unselected it, so I'm going to reselect it and keep dragging. Let's just move this over a little bit so we can see how big it is. Alright, I'm going to go back to my resize mode. I've hit space to do so this time, and I'm just going to grab this red one and drag outwards. There we go. Now if I hit play, oh, sorry, I skipped a step. I need to make sure that this is loading in the correct level once I fall through. So I'm going to select my end level, and I'm going to make sure that the level name ref is set to level 01. The name in your enum needs to match perfectly to the name of the map we've created, which is level 01, including the capitals. So I hit play. I'm just going to walk forward, and I'm not going to jump. I'm just going to fall off. There we go. I fall for a bit, and then it restarts. So if I jump sideways this time, I fall for a bit, and it restarts. So that takes us through getting our sort of base jumping level set up so we can add more jumps in if we want. In the next video, we will set up our second map, in which we will include some obstacles, some moving platforms, and a way to get from level 1 to level 2 using that same blueprint we just created. That said, if you like this video, go ahead and hit that like button down below. If there's anything you want to see in this series or other series, go ahead and let me know in the comments. And again, feel free to join our Discord community. There's a link to it down in the description below. And as always, I hope to see you in the next tutorial, and I hope that you have a wonderful day.